Yes, my name is Fred Dallmayr. In German, it's Winfried Dallmayr. I was born in Germany. I grew up in Bavaria. I went to school there. I went to the University of Munich. I studied law there. I got a doctorate in the law. But afterwards, I went to other places. I was very restless, and I went to many different countries. Spent a year in Belgium. I spent 2 years in Italy. I was searching for the right thing, the right path for me, the right career for me. And then I went to the United States. And there I stayed then. I studied again. I studied political science and philosophy. And I graduated there, and have been teaching in the United States for the last 50 years or so. Well, typically what happens when dialogue does not work is conflict, is violence, is warfare. And this is what we have seen in so many instances. More recently, in the situation in the Ukraine, where dialogue did not work because it was not even attempted. No real dialogue was set up between East and the West. The government was apparently not interested in any dialogue, and so in lieu of dialogue, what you have is a deepening of the conflict, a deepening of mistrust between people, and ultimately violence and warfare. So that's a very good example of when dialogue breaks down, what is going to happen. There are just two alternatives of living in this world. One is with people, and the other is against people. The one with people is with dialogue, negotiation, cooperation. The one against people is through aggression, through violence and the warfare. Now we here in the World Public Forum, we have clearly chosen the path of cooperation and being with people. Yes, I think it plays an enormous role.
Can you answer the question? Say the question, because nobody's going to hear me in the interview. They're going to only hear you.
Oh, they only hear me?
So you need to say, I think that the role of social media
Okay, I'm sorry.
Like that, so that you're...
I thought your question would be heard. Okay, I think the social media have an enormous role in negotiation, conflicts, and increasing the possibility of dialogue. I think social media today play a much greater role than they played maybe 50 or 70 years ago. So there's an increasing importance of social media, and especially for the young people who are almost entirely tuned in to social media, internet and other forms of websites. So this is very important. Unfortunately, social media can also be very badly manipulated and exploited for very extreme kind of purposes. So social media are a good thing, they are a blessing, because they contribute to dialogue, to cooperation and exchanges between people. But social media are also a very dangerous thing because they can be monopolized, they can be manipulated, and they can become a tool of aggression. The problem with Israel, or whatever you call it, the Islamic State, is enormous. But it was not unpredictable. There was a growing emphasis in some areas of developing an antidote to the Shia Muslims, an antidote to Iran especially, an antidote to Hezbollah. And so there was an emphasis on Sunni Islam and a support for a more and more violent and aggressive form of Islam. And Israel is one of these perhaps most violent and most aggressive forms. It is not unpredictable because some of it was generated and manipulated from the very beginning by some of the Sunni Muslim countries, which unfortunately...
What do you think can negotiate with Israel?
Okay. To negotiate with Israel could only be some respected Islamic leaders. I think the West cannot do much, and the East cannot do much. but respected Islamic leaders are the only ones who could have possibly the attention of some of the members of Israel, because only Muslim leaders are so familiar with the text, with the Quran, and with the teachings of Islam. And they would have to demonstrate to these Israel fighters and extremists would have to demonstrate to them what the real nature of Islam is and how their way of dealing and acting in the world is contrary to the teachings of Islam. So it would have to come from some authorities in Saudi Arabia, it would have to come from some authorities in Egypt, in Cairo. Unfortunately, it was in Saudi Arabia that this whole movement, this extremist Sunni Islamic movement, was initiated and was started. And this is through the teachings of Wahhabism. Wahhabism is the most extremist form of fundamentalist Islam. So it can only be through the intervention of some authorities, religious authorities, both in Sunni countries, and this means Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and possibly Turkey. It can only be solved again through education. You know.
Can you try to format the question into
Yeah,
your answer?
okay.
It's a wicked problem. We call it in business the wicked problem.
Okay.
It's a wicked problem.
It is okay. You point to the problem of the relation between religion and political power.
Yeah, because it's social and political power. So
Yeah.
maybe you could address it that way. Religion can't be in power, but the problem here is
Okay.
that the Muslim religion
This problem of the relation of religion and political power has troubled all religions from the very beginning. You know, it has also been a problem in Judaism. It has been a problem in Christianity for a very long time. In Christianity, religion also was in power through the Pope and through the alliance of throne and altar. There was the altar directly in power. Now, this we have overcome after the religious wars through some kind of a negotiation between the various religious denominations. So this has been resolved in some way that religion steps out of the direct ownership of power into an arena where they only exercise influence through education and through teachings and through good example. This has happened in Christianity. It has happened in other religions where they were initially in power.
Can this work in the case of Islam?
It will have to work in some way. It will have to work in some way.
Can you say
the religion also, Islam also will have to undergo this kind of a transformation, because many of the people in Islam, many of the Muslims, are increasingly educated and increasingly able to lead their own lives without direct interference by religious authorities. So the religious authorities have to recognize the maturity of Muslim citizens, have to recognize that they too are agents of their own lives, and this means that they cannot be directly dominated by a religion. They can only be guided, advised, counseled in some way by religious authorities. So this will be a hard lesson to learn for religious authorities, but I think it's a necessary and an inevitable lesson, because this kind of a behavior will not only not be tolerated by Western Democrats or by Asian Democrats, it will also not be tolerated in the long run by Muslims themselves. And we already have this opposition in many countries in the Muslim world. Muslims themselves will not tolerate this behavior. And I think this is the solution to the problem, ultimately. And we will have to support those people who, who mobilize Muslims, who encourage Muslims. So this whole thing of Islamophobia is bad, because we drive Muslims into the arms of Israel. We drive them into the arms of Israel, and they are welcomed, of course, in the arms. So we have to rely on Muslims who themselves are seeking for a way of life which is no longer dominated directly by Sharia and by religious authorities.
you.